Assalamu alaikum. Today we're going to be talking about something really interesting. It's a theme that as you're reading through the Quran, end up seeing a lot of instances of it. It's a theme that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion, in different circles, or like when you're talking to anyone about the Quran or Islam or anything like that. So it's something that is, I feel, quite unique to the faith of Islam. So it's something I think is worth talking about. That particular theme is around meritocracy. Now, meritocracy is something that will fall under the umbrella of justice overall. But meritocracy is in a reductive, if I were to explain that in a very reductive fashion, it is that people are move forward or are rewarded or are, punished even, very much dependent on what they've done. It's a very merit-based approach. It's very focused on the person's performance. It's very much that the people who deserve to go ahead, and the people who don't deserve to go ahead, as per their actions, they don't particularly deserve to go ahead. So that's something that we will be discussing today. And I guess just to provide a little bit of a backdrop as to why I'm talking about this today, I'm going to give a bit more history about the things, my thought process, what I thought before, what I think now, after reading the Quran in a bit more depth. And yeah, so we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it. So myself, I've always been somebody who's been fairly good when it comes to exams and studies and, going through that whole sort of linear progression through school, college, university, job, etc. So barring job, actually. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But like school, I was really good at school. I was really good at college. I was really good at giving exams. And I felt like when you are in those institutions, it's very straightforward what you need to do. I mean, you have a curriculum, where the questions can come from, where the exams are going to be set from. So you're focused on what you need to study. You're focused on working hard. You're focused on the different resources that you have. And then by the point at which you get your results back for your exams, whatever result you get is pretty much a fair reflection of how much work you put into studying for those exams. And then if someone's scored better than you, you kind of very easily accept they're probably smarter than you, more talented than you, or they just studied harder. They put in a lot more effort than you. And that's why the results is reflective of the effort that, that individual put in, and your results are reflective of the effort that you put in. So that's pretty much how things kind of go when it comes to like school, college, uni, etc. Where it gets a little bit convoluted and a little bit complicated is when you go into the professional realm, whether that be business or whether you're a professional worker for a corporate company or you're a doctor or a teacher. Like it really is profession dependent. But you start realizing that your efforts don't necessarily translate into reward. Like that sort of linear correlation that you saw during school and college, it doesn't sort of translate through into your professional life. I mean, you'll often speak to people and they'll sort of recount instances of when, they worked really hard, they put a lot of effort into something, a project or anything else, wherever it may be, and they didn't necessarily get the recognition that they were expecting. Or it could be something a bit more explicit. They might have done a stint of some really good work. I don't want to generalize, but let's say that you're a project manager or something else, and you've done some really good projects, added a lot of value to the business, and then when it comes to promotion time, it's just not there for you. So, and that can make a person feel quite, disillusioned, a little bit like disgruntled. Why is that the way it is? And it becomes like a little bit like not quite what you expected. So it can become a bit jarring coming into professional life. Now, I'm going to quickly come into where sort of Islam and where the Quran comes into this as well. So, but just bear with me whilst I sort of give you a few more examples of where in this world meritocracy doesn't necessarily apply. Another sort of example could be when you're applying for jobs. You might think that you're fully suitable for a job role. You tick all the boxes. You've got the experience. You've got the persona. You've got everything that is, what would be required for that particular job, for that organization. But it might be the case that someone else gets the position just because they knew someone there. It might not be completely transparent why they got the position, but it might not be because of what they know, but it might be because of who they know within that company, within that business sector. So again, meritocracy doesn't fully apply in that scenario either. Another example could be where there's like a legal case. You have limited resources, and whoever you're sort of taking the case against, it might be like a multinational company who have a lot more resources, a lot more access to legal resources and lawyers and whatever else, and then it might not feel like a fair level playing ground, and the final verdict or the final decision by the judge might be against you, even though you might be on the right. Again, meritocracy, in that particular case, justice did not necessarily prevail. One last, I guess, example before I move on is in our sort of political atmosphere. When you look at our politicians and people who you put a lot of your hopes on to promote policies that you are interested in and to fundamentally better the country and better your society and the community, when they're not doing what they need to do, and it's not necessarily because they're bad people, it's because they're just not competent enough to be able to do it, then again, meritocracy doesn't necessarily prevail in that instance as well. Now, having said all of this, now this is, the state of affairs, and I'm generalizing, in this world in general, right? This is just the way things are, and even though you might work really hard, or there might be a company or a culture that promotes meritocracy, but there will always be shortcomings, there will always be gaps that need filling, and in most instances, meritocracy isn't quite there. Now, what does Islam say about meritocracy, and why do I mention this today? I guess one of the themes that when you're reading the Quran sort of comes out is that actually every soul will get what it strives for. There's a lot of quotations, a lot of things that are in the Quran that sort of point to the fact that all of your deeds will be brought to the forefront, whether good deeds or an atom's weight of good or an atom's weight of evil. And I think that's quite beautiful and fantastic. And the reason I say that is because oftentimes when you feel like you're not getting the recognition that you deserve in this world, you sort of pander to your superior, you sort of pander to the leadership team or pander to somebody else, or you're trying to exaggerate what you've done, or in certain cases you might even be tempted to take the credit for something that someone else has done, and so in order to get that recognition. So it's a little bit jarring. It makes you feel a little bit insincere. It makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. But given the fact that on the day of judgment, when you are faced by God, when you have that final, that sort of meeting with God, your deeds are there, the good deeds, the bad deeds, everything is there in a clear record. And I think then there is no real room for pretense. There's no pretension. There's no pretending. Oh, I didn't do this. I did do this. There's no room for excuses either. Like it is going to be a clear record. And I think the fact that in our faith, again, another theme that comes out in the Quran, which links in meritocracy, is the fact that God knows everything. God knows you better than you know yourself. God knows the content of your heart, whether you express them or you don't express them. God knows the content of your soul. And, some people, they might feel a little bit uncomfortable with that. But then in that instance, you might have to question, what is it that you're doing that makes you uncomfortable with that idea that God knows everything that you're doing? But if you are on the right way and if you're doing all the right things, the fact that God knows all of that, nothing is going to go amiss. Nothing is going to, it's not going to be like you do something good and God doesn't notice. God knows everything. He's not going to notice everything, and everything will be brought out on the day of judgment. I think that is quite easing thought, that you don't have to, you will be rewarded for everything that you do. And I think that should make a believer, or anyone who's doing righteous and good deeds and giving back to the community, that should put them in a state of almost comfort. It should make them feel good. And this is a theme that is, if you read the Quran, it is in multiple places in the Quran that no soul shall be wronged. And I think it's one of the most beautiful things, which is a part of the Islamic faith. And in other instances, there are, things like no soul will, face the burden of another soul. There's no room for, you know, ambiguity, and there's no room for like subjectivity. Or was that good? Was that bad? Is that something that he did or she did? It's actually, you are responsible for your own actions, and you need to take ownership of your actions, because everything will be brought to the forefront. And that's, in some other occasions, God says, who will send forward a good loan for me? And I think, again, that is so beautiful. So again, I'm not going into how God will reward those particular actions or punish the bad actions. I mean, there are instances in the Quran where they say God is going to reward your actions multifold. So it's not even one by one; it's going to be multifold. So, but the fact of the matter is that all of your actions and deeds are going to be there, and there's going to be no disparity between what you've done, who you are as a person, inside and outside, and what God knows, because His knowledge encompasses everything. So take home messages, this world, everything in it. I mean, there are obviously blessings of God within this world. There's some wonderful things in this world. But for Muslims, for believers, our aspiration should always be trying to gain the favor of God through this world, and trying to make God the ultimate goal, because He is fundamentally the ultimate goal, or meeting with Him. And I'm gonna stop this podcast, well, not podcast, this of conversation, one-way conversation, on one final note, and that is something that our Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet, alayhi salam, used to say: whoever, because the quote is in Urdu, so I'm translating it in my mind. Well, the original quote obviously was in Arabic, but I'm going to say in Urdu first. जिसने खुदा को पाया उसने क्या खोया, जिसने खुदा को खोया उसने क्या पाया. Translated in English, that's like, whoever has gained God, what has he lost? And whoever has lost God, what has he gained? Again, reinforcing the point that God is our ultimate destination. Thank you. Take care of yourself. Allah Hafiz.